Alright, let me start by saying that my wife Jenna and I have always been the kind of people who try to see the best in others. We've been on countless RV trips, met all sorts of people on the road, and never had a reason to feel unsafe. That is, until this trip. It was late October, and we were driving through a pretty remote stretch of Highway 47. The area was mostly forest, with nothing but the occasional gas station or rundown diner every 50 miles or so. Jenna had convinced me to take this scenic route because she thought it would be more peaceful. In hindsight, peaceful was the last word I'd use to describe it. It was getting dark, and we hadn't seen another car in over an hour when we spotted him. A guy, maybe in his late 20s or early 30s, standing on the shoulder of the road next to a beat-up sedan with the hood popped open. He had his thumb out and waved at us as we passed. Normally, I wouldn't stop. Who even hitchhikes anymore? But Jenna gave me that look, the one that says, "Don't be a jerk." So, I pulled over. The guy introduced himself as Evan. He said his car had broken down and that his phone was dead. He seemed normal enough, polite even, and he wasn't carrying anything suspicious, just a small backpack. He asked if we could give him a lift to the next town, which he claimed was about 30 miles away. Jenna immediately said yes before I could even think it over. Evan climbed into the RV and sat on the little bench by the kitchenette. We made small talk for a while. He said he was on his way to visit his sister and had been driving for hours when his car overheated. His story checked out, but there was something about him that made me uneasy. He kept glancing out the window, almost like he was looking for someone. I brushed it off as paranoia. I mean, the guy was stranded, right? He was probably just nervous. We drove for maybe 20 minutes before Jenna said she was tired and suggested we pull over to rest for the night. I wasn't thrilled about stopping in the middle of nowhere, but I figured it'd be fine. Evan offered to sleep in the passenger seat so Jenna and I could take the bed in the back. It seemed like a decent enough arrangement. But that night, I woke up to a strange sound, like metal scraping against metal. I nudged Jenna awake and whispered, "Do you hear that?" She nodded, her eyes wide. We crept to the front of the RV, but Evan wasn't there. His backpack was gone too. I stepped outside, my flashlight cutting through the dark. That's when I saw it. The RV hood was open, and wires were hanging out like someone had ripped them apart. "Evan!" I shouted, but the only response was the rustling of trees in the wind. We were stranded. Jenna and I spent the next hour trying to fix the engine, but it was no use. Evan had taken something crucial. Our maps were gone too, which meant we had no idea how far the next town was. And then came the worst part. Around 3 a.m., I heard footsteps. Not the casual kind either. Deliberate, heavy steps crunching the gravel outside. I peeked through the window and froze. It wasn't Evan. There were two men standing by the edge of the woods, just far enough that I couldn't make out their faces. One of them was holding something that looked like a crowbar. I whispered to Jenna, "We need to go. Now." "But the RV," she started, but I cut her off. "It doesn't matter. We'll push it if we have to." Somehow, I managed to jury-rig the engine just enough to get it running. It sputtered and groaned, but it moved. We didn't even bother packing up. We just jumped in and started driving. As we pulled onto the road, I glanced in the rearview mirror. There they were, Evan and one of the other men, standing just beyond the tree line, watching us. We drove straight to the nearest police station, which was about an hour away. The officers took our report and went back to check the area, but they didn't find anything. No car, no Evan, nothing. To this day, I can't explain what happened or what those men wanted, but one thing's for sure. I'll never stop for a hitchhiker again. What do you think? I've always loved the outdoors. It's where I feel most like myself. My name's Paul, and for as long as I can remember, camping has been my escape from the chaos of everyday life. I've done it all. National parks, well-marked campgrounds, even a few off-the-grid spots. But this story? This was the last time I ever went off-grid. It started as one of those weeks where everything just piles up. Work deadlines, endless emails, people calling me non-stop. It was like my brain was short-circuiting. So I decided to pack up my RV and head out to a remote forest I'd read about online. No campgrounds, no tourists, no noise. Just me, nature, and some peace and quiet. I spent hours researching the area, making sure I had everything I'd need. Extra food, a satellite phone, just in case, and a trusty old map, since the place was way out of cell service. I even told a buddy where I'd be, just to cover my bases. The drive out there was amazing. The deeper into the forest I went, the more I felt my stress melt away. By the time I found the perfect spot, a small clearing surrounded by towering pines with a view of a distant ridge, I was already feeling like myself again. I parked the RV, set up a small fire pit, and spent the afternoon hiking around. It was perfect. Quiet. The only sounds were the wind rustling through the trees and the occasional bird call. But then night fell. At first it was peaceful, sitting by the fire, staring up at the stars. You don't realize how much you miss silence until you're out in a place like that. Around 10 p.m., I decided to turn in. That's when things got strange. I was lying in bed, windows cracked open for the cool breeze, when I heard it. A low, rhythmic thumping. Not loud, but steady. I figured it was an animal, maybe a deer or some kind of nocturnal critter. It didn't bother me too much at first, but then it got closer. I sat up and listened. The thumping had turned into a sort of scraping sound, like something dragging across the ground. It circled the RV, stopping every few feet. My first thought was a bear, but I hadn't left any food out, and there was no growling or snorting. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped outside, my heart pounding. The fire had died down, and the clearing was pitch black. I scanned the area but didn't see anything, just trees and shadows. "Hello?" I called out, feeling stupid but also hoping it was just some harmless camper playing a prank. No response. That's when I noticed the footprints. They were faint but definitely there, pressed into the dirt around the RV. Human footprints. Bare feet. I froze. Who the hell would be out here, barefoot, in the middle of nowhere? I didn't sleep much after that. I locked the RV doors, kept my flashlight close, and listened to every creak and rustle outside. By dawn, I was exhausted, but determined not to let some weirdo ruin my trip. I decided to stay one more night. Big mistake. The second night was worse. Around midnight, I woke up to the sound of tapping on one of the RV windows. Not the gentle kind either. Sharp, deliberate taps, like someone knocking with their knuckles. I bolted upright and shone my flashlight toward the window, but there was nothing there. The tapping moved to another window, then another, like whoever, or whatever it was circling the RV, trying to mess with me. At that point, I wasn't brave anymore. I was scared out of my mind. I grabbed a knife from the kitchen drawer and sat by the door, heart racing, trying to figure out what to do. And then it stopped. For a few minutes, everything was silent. No tapping, no footsteps, nothing. I started to think maybe it was over. Maybe whoever it was had left. That's when I heard the handle of the RV door jiggle. I don't think I've ever felt that kind of fear before. I shouted, "I'm armed! Get the hell out of here!" and banged the knife against the counter for effect. The jiggling stopped. I waited, holding my breath, knife in hand. Then, in the faint glow of the moonlight coming through the window, I saw a shadow move past the RV. Not running, not panicked, just walking. Morning couldn't come fast enough. As soon as there was enough light, I packed up and got the hell out of there. The road back felt endless, but eventually, I found a ranger station and reported what had happened. The rangers were polite but skeptical. They suggested it might have been animals or some locals playing a prank. But I know what I saw, or rather what I felt. That wasn't a prank, and it sure as hell wasn't an animal. I haven't camped off-grid since, and to anyone thinking about it, let my story be a warning. You're never as alone as you think you are. I'm Rachel, and this happened a couple of years ago during what was supposed to be a fun family camping trip. My husband, Tom, our teenage daughter, Lily, and I had planned this weekend getaway to the desert. We'd been looking forward to it for weeks, a chance to unplug, spend some quality time together, and enjoy the quiet of nature. But we were running late. Tom had to stay late at work, and by the time we got everything packed into the RV and hit the road, it was almost sunset. The drive out was beautiful, though. The desert looked like something out of a painting as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting everything in shades of orange and red. The plan was to take a remote highway that would get us close to the campsite before turning off onto an even smaller road. Tom was driving. Lily had her headphones in, and I was flipping through the map, trying to make sure we didn't miss our turn. That's when things started to feel off. Once the sun was gone, the highway was pitch black, just our headlights cutting through the night. No streetlights, no other cars, nothing. At first, I thought it was peaceful, but then I noticed how tense Tom was. "Everything okay?" I asked him. "Yeah," he said, but he didn't sound convincing. "Just weird how empty it is out here." I shrugged it off. It was the middle of nowhere, after all. But then, about 20 minutes later, we rounded a bend and saw it, a roadblock. At first, I thought it was just some fallen rocks or debris from a storm. But as we got closer, I realized it wasn't random. Someone had deliberately piled rocks, branches, and even an old tire across the road. Tom slowed down, muttering something under his breath. "What do we do?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm for Lily's sake. "We'll clear it," he said. "Probably just kids messing around." He parked the RV, grabbed a flashlight from the glove compartment, and stepped out. I stayed inside with Lily, who had taken off her headphones and was watching everything with wide eyes. Tom hadn't been out there for more than a minute when I saw him freeze, the flashlight beam darting toward the bushes at the side of the road. "Rachel!" he yelled, running back toward the RV. "Lock the doors!" I didn't even think. I just hit the locks. He jumped in, slammed the door, and threw the RV into reverse. "What's going on?" I asked, my voice shaking. "I saw someone," he said, his eyes darting to the mirrors. "In the bushes. They were watching us." Lily gasped, and I felt a chill run down my spine. As Tom backed the RV up, the headlights swung across the roadblock, and that's when we saw them. Two figures stepped out of the darkness, their faces covered with bandanas. One of them had something in his hand that looked like a crowbar. "Go, go, go," I shouted, my heart pounding. Tom floored it, reversing down the highway until we were a safe distance away. But we couldn't just keep going backward forever. "We have to turn around," he said, his voice tight. He managed to get the RV turned around, but as we started heading back the way we came, I saw headlights behind us. "They're following us," I whispered, barely able to get the words out. Tom pressed the gas harder, but the RV wasn't exactly built for speed. The headlights behind us were getting closer. Lily was crying now, and I was doing everything I could to keep it together. "There's gotta be a turnoff somewhere," I said, frantically looking at the map. "There!" Tom shouted, pointing to a dirt road up ahead. He swerved onto it, and the RV bounced and jolted as we sped down the uneven path. The headlights disappeared for a moment, and I thought maybe we'd lost them. But then I saw them again, bouncing along the dirt road behind us. "Hold on!" Tom yelled, as he steered the RV off the dirt road and into a patch of scrubby desert. He killed the lights and the engine, and we all sat there in the dark, holding our breath. The other vehicle stopped where we'd left the road. We could see their headlights sweeping the area as they looked for us. For what felt like forever, we sat there in silence, too scared to even whisper. Eventually, the headlights turned around and disappeared back down the dirt road. We waited another hour before Tom decided it was safe to move. He started the RV, and we slowly made our way back to the highway, keeping the lights off until we were sure we were alone. By dawn, we found ourselves back on a main road. We flagged down a trucker, who let us use his CB radio to call the authorities. When we told the story to the police, they looked skeptical. They said it was probably just locals messing around, or maybe even animals that had startled us. But I know what I saw. We never went back to that area. And as much as I love camping, I don't think I'll ever feel safe in the middle of nowhere again.